Hey, welcome back to the What If Universe. I'm Drew here bringing something new, and for today, I'm joined by Pickled Dill. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me, Drew. I'm Pickled Dill. My primary channel is Pickled Dill, in which I do Pokemon What Ifs. I also have the Pickled Dill podcast, my second channel, where I do a bit of everything. Some movie reviews, some podcasts some What Ifs for other franchises, and who knows, may even do some interviews in the future.
Honestly, it sounds fairly similar to my second channel, which is just a bunch of random stuff, older What If videos, and
Exactly.
a ton of other podcasts I put up there that are not What If related, honestly.
Yeah.
I guess for people curious about those, since I don't talk about too often, I do an Ace Attorney podcast where I talked with Sean Oji, who's a law school student, and we discussed episodes from a legal perspective, which is very interesting to talk about anime in that format. And as far as other stuff, it's just kind of random,
Yeah. I mean, I've taken a look at your second channel, seen some of your stuff, like your retrospectives on editing. Yeah, it's always good to see your content, and I mean, I enjoy your what ifs as well on your main channel.
Yeah, I think I do decent for myself. Though, to be fair, I'm more known for editing for Anime Sage, which a lot of people kind of know by now. But for people wanting me to interview him, that's going to happen eventually. It's just we're really busy, so probably be some point in the summer where we get thrown in and get Same thing with Plus Ultraman, another highly requested person to be on this show. We're still just trying to sort that out. We'll figure it out,
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just saying, I'll definitely listen to those episodes. They'll be really good.
Oh yeah, so first interview, I'm gonna ask questions related to what ifs and different things as time goes on. I kind of categorized it a little bit to make it interesting, and also if YouTube's automated chapters thing works properly, it'll separate things maybe. We'll see what happens with that. So to start things off, what made you start doing what if scenarios?
I've always loved anime and pop culture, and I've been a long time viewer of what ifs. I've always thought they were really interesting, even going back to the old Marvel What If comics. But for the longest time, I always felt that you had to have an established following and then pivot into what ifs, like Masco X, how he started on TFS, then using that fanbase built his What If channel. However, by watching people like Ronin Charizard hold themselves up, I thought, hey, this is something I've wanted to do for a long time. Maybe it is possible to just start there.
Well, fun fact with Ronin, not Ronin, I'm thinking of a different person, my bad. I was thinking of Broken Ronin, who used to be known by Anime X, who did the opposite actually. He did what ifs for a bit, then quit and start over. So I guess you could say technically both are possible from that perspective, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to see there's so much about doing YouTube that I never imagined and I thought were rules, in inverted commas, from an outsider perspective, that upon doing it I've just gone, no, that was me just being an idiot and giving myself excuses not to start. Yeah, so I'm glad to actually...
Oh yeah, it's never too late to start.
Oh yeah.
So what was it like learning from making like your first what if video, I guess?
Oh, my first what if video was not good. That's why it's the only series that never got continued. But it was interesting because the video, as it stands, was the third iteration of it. Initially I tried to do conventional PowerPoint slides, then when that failed I tried doing a live recording to slides as they went, and that went terribly, and so finally I just went, to hell with it. I'm gonna record my face staring into a camera. And, well, that was bad. So I learned something there, but I also learned a lot about video editing, audio editing, how to include music in what ifs, how to do layering with those overlays. So it was a valuable experience that I'm incredibly grateful for, even if I wish I could have been better at the beginning.
To be fair, I think I did my first What If video twice, technically. I did an original take, and then when I wasn't satisfied enough with it, I remastered it down the line, which I still need to do that with some of my older stuff, but just takes a while, you know. Some people aren't as interested.
I have a Redux in the works for this first video, so I definitely think that's a good idea to be able to do a remaster if you're not fully satisfied.
Do you have advice for people like starting to make What If content?
Probably the best advice I can give you, and this is a bit of a cliche, but failure is only final if you make it final. You know, as I said, I'm not super thrilled with how my first video went, but there were lessons that came from that I was able to be better next time, and every subsequent video I try to look at it and go, okay, here's some things I did well, here's some things I did not so well. Let's try and, keep what was good and improve what wasn't, and just keep trying, keep going, and never accept it as, oh, this was bad, so I have lost, I have failed, I have whatever. And don't be afraid to try something. If it doesn't work, that's still very valuable information to go, okay, next time I won't do this.
That's fair enough. Something else I did want to bring up, since you mentioned earlier you do What Ifs on a different series. What's it like doing What Ifs for each of them? Kinda like how it's different writing style wise.
It's actually quite different. It's surprising because I'd been doing Pokemon What Ifs for almost 6 months when I decided to start branching into Star Wars and Dragon Ball Z, and it was different. At first I thought it would be the same basic style of writing, both narrative, characters, combat, but there were different styles of power scaling, different forms of rules to the universe, as it were, and also the fact that different audience bases, and so having to try and adapt to those. Also, it was a bit strange to just, almost start from the beginning again. But it was necessary, to look at it and go, okay, I have learnt how to be a Pokemon What Iffer, but I need to remember that I'm a beginner at Dragon Ball What Ifs, and I need to look at this as a beginner. I was probably rambling and didn't help. But hopefully you'll be able to cut it together to sound profound, or at least not insane.
No, I think it makes sense. If you're starting a new series, you need to approach it as if you're doing it for the first time, not like you've done this before. Because there's a lot of people who underestimate things and they try to go in a different series, but it's too structured, like their other stuff just doesn't work out as well, I feel like.
Exactly, I think I may have made that mistake a bit with my Star Wars one. But, as I said before, mistakes are valuable because they provide information and help you to grow.
Yeah, fun fact with the Star Wars What If that I did in the past, the only issue I have with it is I made the music way too damn loud. So the editing looks good, like on par to what I do kinda today. Slightly worse, but one day I'm just planning to just re-narrate that, just re-release it, because like I enjoyed it, but it's like sometimes you have to recognize like when to take content down.
Oh yeah, definitely. I know that I definitely, early on, had my music way too loud. I was watching one of my old videos with some friends the other day and went, geez, you can barely hear me over that music.
Yeah, I was about to ask you, have you ever had a time where you had to take down something because some like quality wise was wrong with it, not like necessarily it was bad.
No, not as of yet. I mean, I probably will do that with the original Ash May video once the Redux is out. The only time I've really taken something down was when the YouTube copyright bot has gone, no, you can't have this.
Nah, I get that.
That's the only time I've done it so far, but I've only been doing this for about 6 months, so I imagine as I get further along and hopefully develop more, I might look back at some of this stuff that I'm doing now and did in the last couple of months and go, I'm going to take this down and redo it as such.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to bring out there, people. It's not a bad thing if you ever feel like you need to redo something that shows that you actually care about what you're presenting to people, you know?
Yeah, I mean, and even that is, like, it's a good thing. And nothing is ever really lost. Where even if you take it down, it wasn't.
If you choose not to archive it, it can be lost forever. That's just how it is.
That's true. But I meant more in terms of, like, your time wasn't lost, your effort wasn't lost. There was still value to it. There were still things to be gained. So, nothing's ever really a failure. I'd probably keep bringing up that word too much due to having had to learn to overcome a great fear of failure to make these videos.
I was curious, what do you do when you have writer's block when writing a story?
Writer's block? I either try to shift over to a different story, which has been helpful with the second channel, because sometimes taking a massive shift over to a different franchise entirely helps, or other times I'll do something like I might allow myself, a short break to go watch something that I've been meaning to, or to catch up on a different what if, or even, since I write a lot late at night, just going, you know what, I'm going to put this down and come back to it in the morning. Also, another thing with writer's block, if I have some small plans, like my worst writer's block is often I'll have a beginning of a part planned, I'll have an end of a part planned, and then I'll get block in the middle and go, connective tissue is hard, so I find it helpful to just jot down what I know for definite, even as just dot points, so that when I come back to it, I'm like, okay, cool, I didn't hit a wall and just walk away. I made sure there was at least something good going down on the page before I took a break. I also find talking with friends can be very helpful for writer's block. Having someone who's not as close to the story means they can sometimes see things that you as the writer can't. And you go, yeah, you're right. That would be really, that would be a really good way to do this. Or, I didn't think that I'd written myself into a corner by doing this. Maybe I'll backtrack and I can still get the intended result I wanted through a different route. Feedback is always incredibly helpful, and having someone to bounce your ideas off.
I guess, back to the point with writing, how would you describe, like, your what-if writing style compared to other people, you think?
I'm overly verbose and spend too long on things that I probably could skim a bit more. And that would be it. I know that I will probably have longer stories in terms of more parts simply because I tend to fully explore all events rather than skimming over stuff. At the same time, I like to think that my what-ifs are good, just not to be too egotistical about it. Good in the sense that I like to think they are well written in a strictly literary sense, and that they do go into enough detail, because that's always something I find disappointing when what-ifs just skim over important stuff. So, good in the detail it gives, but could maybe use a bit less to try and find that healthy balance in the middle.
I think with me more recently, I've shifted from a less serious tone from what I do with my content to more like comedy based, and I've noticed the same thing as well with Anime Sage, due to the fact we both talk a lot. There's a lot more humor the way that we approach a lot of stories, even if the scenarios should be taken more seriously technically. It's just how we chose to go about it ish, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of value to adding humor to things. I've been trying to do that a bit more where it's tonally appropriate. Like, with Dragon Ball What Ifs, adding a bit more of that Toriyama style comedy compared to, say, Star Wars, which during the period I've said it is somewhat bleak. So I definitely think there's a value to comedy, and I've been trying to implement it a bit in my Pokemon What Ifs as well.
Like, the only thing I don't approve of is, like, channels literally just stealing fan fictions, just retelling them as a what if,
And then running them
and
through
make that the video.
and then running them through text to speech.
There's those channels, but there's also, like, actual people doing this, It's just nuts.
Yeah. It's a crazy sort of industry, if you can call it that we're in, where there are all sorts. There are people like us who try to create quality content, and then there are also those who, as you said, just rip off someone else's fan fiction, don't credit it, and then just try and pass it off as their own work, which is always disheartening.
I guess something else to add to that is, I guess we can talk about the importance to, like, video editing when it comes to this type of content. I think that's not always talked a whole lot about.
I mean, I know that video editing has always been probably my weakest area when it comes to my videos. Since the advent of the show program, but I've reduced my slides to generally only a couple per video, which are variations of the thumbnail. But I know that you and a lot of people still do really impressive full visuals, like your Spider-Man one, for example.
That Spider-Man one was very difficult to do for my first time using live action and also a Marvel property. Like, there was so much I had to go into it. Like, I used video game footage for certain scenes that made enough sense. Basically.
I imagine you put a lot of effort into it, and it shows, because it came out as good quality content.
Or that fight scene between Sandman and Spider-Man, because in the game, you only did that with the black suit Spider-Man, so I had to find footage of someone using a mod where it had the actual suit that he went in the first part, basically, to make it make sense.
Yeah. And it's that going the extra mile that you clearly did, which is really impressive.
But I think that's too much praise to me, honestly. I do want to get into other stuff. So I've seen channels that literally do, like, just gameplay, which is fine. I think, like, let's say you're doing a Pokemon What If, you're playing Pokemon, talking about it, that seems alright. But if you're playing, like, COD or, like, Fortnite or some of these other strange game choices and trying to tell it what if, it just comes off a lot more lazily than someone actually playing a game that makes sense, like, within its franchise,
That's fair enough. I mean, one of my favorite channels did start that way, but as it's grown, it started using more relevant gameplay footage, which is, great and showing growth, which I'm always a fan of. So, yeah, I definitely understand what you mean.
I think the other one is just people just slap a thumbnail and just read a script, which I guess that's okay, but it just comes off a bit lazily to me personally. But I know some people don't have, like, high quality stuff or software, so it's understandable if you're starting out doing something like that.
I mean, I know I'm guilty of that, but I at least try to have a few thumbnails throughout just to shift things up and try to have the overlay.
Well, I'm not trying to call you out specifically. I'm just saying, like, I hope people, like, evolve from that, because I know people are still doing this, like, 2 or 3 years now. It's still the same style. It's like, I guess if it works, but it just comes off kind of lazy that you're not trying to go further for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But all right, do you want to get into some questions from the Discord?
Yeah,
Actually,
sure. Yeah.
all right. I think we'll start with the YouTuber one. So the Grace Hokage had 3 questions, so we'll just go about them in order. So his first one was, what is a what if you always wanted to do?
Oh, there's so many. I have a whole back catalogue of ones that I've wanted to do for a long time, but haven't got around to doing it either because I've got too many in that region, or because I try to keep my Pokemon ones limited to only 2 in the same region at a time, simply so I'm not just recycling plot points and having multiple weeks in a row where they're in the same, sort of vicinity. So, trying to think of ones that I've always wanted to do but haven't. I'll throw out a simple one that is probably going to be coming out before too long, which is, what if Ash was Koga's son, and what if Ash and Misty were twins?
All right. Let's see, his next question was, how do you develop your what ifs?
That's an interesting question and pretty broad, so I'll try to answer it concisely and to the best of my ability, but I may unfortunately wind up completely missing the sort of question he means.
Yeah, I think we have other questions I'll ask anyway, so hopefully it helps him out. But I think if you want to give like a broad way you like construct your what ifs, I think that'll work for now.
In general, when I'm choosing a what if, I like to consider some of the implications. Go, ooh, this could be really interesting through this being a result of the premise, and this, and this, and this. And through that, I kind of make the base skeleton of going, okay, what route allows me to explore these fascinating implications? And along the way, I start building in minor things such as subplots for the additional characters, rivals, etc. And I try to build a vague timeline. And then, when it comes to each individual part, I know, okay, this is the chunk of the vague timeline I want to fill. And that's when I start going into the specific details of, okay, how do I make this the best it can be? How do I lay foreshadowing for other things? I don't plan it out excruciatingly in detail from the beginning. I do that more at the micro level and the macro.
The last question he asked was, what is your favorite one you've done? I guess done so far, I assume. That's what he probably meant by that.
Probably. That's an interesting one because I'm proud of all my what ifs. So it's hard, even the ones that I'm like, okay, these could be better, because they were all experiences and growth and brought me in contact with my community, who I love. But probably the one that is my personal favorite from a narrative standpoint is what if Ash was raised by Getsus? Because I think that has the most interesting implications, and because I know some of the things that are going to come later on that I'm really excited to write about, that's probably the one that I am most enjoying on a personal level.
Alright. Snaffin, Siphon, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name. He asked, do you have any scripts ready for what if Pokemon Journeys was set in Galar?
At the time of recording, no. At the time of release, probably also no, but maybe.
Let's see, SC Wolfbite asks, are you having Ash and Serena get together for what if Serena star in Kantos?
That would be a spoiler. You'll have to stay tuned to find out that for yourself.
Alright, so Blaze RK9 asks, what sets you apart from other what ifers?
This may sound like a bit of a, take it however you will, but I don't generally look at myself, as being better or different from other what ifers, as though they're competition who I must overcome. I see it more in terms of, we're all on our own journeys, we're all at different parts of that journey, and all of us, or at least all the ones I respect and think about, are, trying their best, so I don't really have an answer, would be the truth, because that's not really how I think. Sorry, that probably doesn't answer your question.
If someone was asking me that question, I take content creation as far as what ifs go. I would say a bit more historically as far as being engaged with the community, but as far as my content goes, it's a lot more moved around to like trying to make it funny, but also follow the main plot to a certain degree, if that makes sense.
Nice to have that familiar sort of, structure, so that...
Like, have you ever watched the dub for Ghost Stories?
Yes.
Or know about it?
Yes.
So that's how my content is structured these days.
But you do a foot race, and whoever arrives at the office first gets to pick what the plot is about.
Well, it's not that necessarily. It's more like I keep the main structure of whatever the story is, but as far as dialogue and how certain events go, it just changes kind of like to how I personally do it. Because with Ghost Stories, they couldn't do much because the animation was already there, so they only could change a good percentage of the dialogue and how the plot followed.
Oh, I mean...
So my thing, it's a bit more expansive.
To be fair, they definitely did their darndest to make some changes, particularly with, what was it, Momoko? Yes. Yeah. That was something.
Well, to be fair, the person who was writing on it, like, genuinely did not like anime. Like, which was why it came out the way it did. Like, people asked, like, why did Ghost Stories turn out the way it did? It's simply because the writer honestly didn't like anime, so he kind of did whatever he wanted to, basically, when doing
Sounds
it.
about right. It was a wild time watching that anime.
Well, considering it came out in 2005, and like stuff that's further back around that time, when AVD Films was still dubbing stuff, like you had a lot more questionable dubs that got released, to how faithful they took the script compared to how it is today.
I mean, it's just funny looking at some of the big dub names who were in that. I just have to wonder how they would have looked at it going, wow, this is something very different.
Yeah. I don't think that's a bad thing. I just think that it was interesting, like, how we got to that point with
not at all. I mean, I think it's one of the most fascinating stories, and I mean, I watched it, so it had some value at least, to keep me so engaged.
Oh yeah, for real.
Yeah.
All right, who else we got? Oh, I did want to ask you, what do you think of the term "what iffer"? Because I personally am someone who actually doesn't like that term when people mention it in the community. I don't know why.
I've got no personal objections to it. I've used it a few times, just as a collective term, just because I can't think of any that is, like, I don't have any other alternatives coming to mind, but yeah, I've got no strong feelings for or against it. I'm curious, what are the things you don't like about it?
It kind of sounds kind of cringe, It's what I don't like about it, personally. It's like, what type of content do you make? It's like, oh, I'm a what iffer. It's like, it kind of reminds me of the connotation of what happened to Gamer. It used to be like something that was decently respected in certain circles, but now it's more of like a term either edgelords are using to dunk on people, or something cringy they just call a Let's Play channel at that point.
I'm a gamer. You wouldn't understand the deep lore of Crash Bandicoot because you're just a noob. So, GG, I'm leaving. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And that was the terrible impersonation section of the podcast. I will promise never to do that again.
Alright, let's move on to some Discord member questions. So, Ox Blossom 19 asked, if you can have many what ifs, how many do you have planned for the future? Okay, that makes sense.
I've got a lot. I think I've got about 20 in various stages, from just a concept up to currently on the screen ongoing, but I'm constantly coming up with new ones all the time. I kind of can't stop. It's a bit of a curse, just going, hey, what if you started spinning this plate as well, and what if you did this plate as well? Every time I had an idea, I started it, and by the time I had about 8 series going, I realized I have started too many too fast. I need to slow down and keep working on what I've got. So that's why, if anyone's been watching from the beginning of the channel, you would have seen a boom of what ifs, and then that got pared down to mostly continuing parts of existing ones with only 1 or 2 new ones every so often, just to keep, the content flowing, in the sense that I don't want everything to end at once.
Yeah, I think with me, none of my series necessarily ended. It was more like I decided to just put them off till later. Like for My Hero, for example, since I do stuff for that, like I'm planning to bring some of them back during the fall. But the thing is, like, I realized I couldn't bring them all back, so I had to cancel one of them, which was What If I was in MHA, because 1, I just had too many My Hero What Ifs, and 2, it just felt very self-indulgent of putting myself into my hero.
Yeah.
There was problems with how overpowered my character was, so I was like, I'm just kind of done with
That's understandable, but I mean, it's good to hear that some of your MHA ones are coming back. I remember seeing the announcement the other day, and that was exciting.
Oh yeah, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff, especially trying to include like pilot manga material into a series, because the thing is, like, an author only thought through that initial stage, like they didn't get any further.
That is true.
So trying to reincorporate their idea, like, I really have to figure out how to make it make sense.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty neat. It's definitely a unique sort of way to handle it, because I'm trying to think of any pilot mangas specifically that I'm familiar with. I just remember the original Death Note form that got redone, and the Jujutsu Kaisen one, which recently became the movie.
I'm pretty sure Naruto has a pilot. No one's done like what ifs trying to make it canon and try to have it follow everything.
You're right, because that's the one where he is a literal fox boy, isn't he?
I think
so, I remember reading about that, but I haven't read it personally.
I know I've read it a long time ago. I just don't recall it because I haven't reread it recently.
That's fair enough.
I think the more interesting thing with the My Hero story is basically keeping like Deku as this quirkless type of character being trained by someone who is a former like #1 hero type of character, basically.
I think that is interesting because, looking at a quirkless hero brings up all sorts of implications about, inequality in the world, which is, I think, one of the central themes of MHA.
Well, I think with this story in particular, you have someone like with Snipe, for example. He has a relatively decent quirk, but the thing is, like, he doesn't have things that keep him like immortal. He doesn't have like armor. Like, if someone was lucky enough to shoot at him, they could probably pop his head off.
Yeah, that would be unfortunate, to say the least.
And I guess it's kind of like he saw that kind of Deku. Like, maybe he could at least try to be a hero, I guess. That's how I went about it.
Solid series. I mean, because I like a lot of your series. I'm hoping to see. Sorry?
Well, I think it's interesting, besides that, doing the opposite connotation with how Stain's written for my version for what Stain trained Deku, because a lot of people thought it was going to go similar to how Plus Ultraman did it, but I specifically mentioned it's like one of the main reasons I haven't like co-written or assisted with his Stain series. I didn't agree with the direction he took the character. That's just me personally. I think Stain's charisma, at the point he would have met Deku, he would have outshined him, and he would have been able to convince him to at least listen to him.
I think it's great to be able to have two very different versions of the series, because, I mean, doing the same idea, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, as long as they're different series, so you feel like you're watching two different stories, and that is one of the great things about the infinite universe of what ifs, that different creative eyes will take the same idea down different paths.
Well, yeah, because by the point you reach the point where Tenya confronts him, like you deal with this like aftermath shock, like what happened to his friend, like why did he join this random guy who attacked his brother, basically. And it's like a different story now to how like Class 1A is now handled compared to how it used to be. Let's see, Shimigami asks, if you had to quit YouTube, would you leave your channel up and keep the videos? I know some people.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it depends why I quit YouTube. If it was, my video had inspired something horrible, I don't want to say it because I don't know, whether you have children watching it, but if somehow my videos inspired someone in the real world to do something awful, I'd take it down because I'd feel very guilty. But if it was just, I inevitably die in a nasty stapler accident any day now, I'd leave that up because, the content isn't me, if that makes sense. The content, needs to be its own thing separate from me, at least in my opinion. And I know the irony of how many times I've said me and I in a sentence about distancing from me.
Well, the thing is that people don't consider there's two ways people go about YouTube, and I've talked to some mentoring about this. I told them you have two options. You can either be yourself in front of people, or you can choose to be a character. And the thing is that with both of us, we chose to essentially be a character. What we represent is probably not close to how we represent ourselves in real life.
Oh, absolutely. I'm much more likable as Pickled Dill than I am as myself. Yes. At least I like to hope so.
Alright, let's see. Back to what if community-related questions, actually. Should content creators allow their fans to dictate what they make?
No. That's a pretty simple one. I try to make sure that my audience will be happy, as in I try not to just be self-indulgent, but I feel that my duty is to the story first. So, for example, my most popular series is What If Red Trained Ash, in that I made a decision that a lot of fans didn't like. However, I truly believe that that choice will make the story richer overall. So despite all the claims I got and requests and in some cases orders to retcon that or to backpedal it, I'm not going to. Likewise, one of the worst mistakes I ever made in one of my series was I'm going to give the fans this thing that they will like, even though it didn't really fit into the story. And since then I've had to look back going, oh man, I shot myself in the foot by doing that.
I mean, I've done worse. I accidentally brought Nappa back to life, because when I was doing my first Dragon Ball What If, I forgot how the wish was worded. So he just came back for no reason
Goku's
at all.
single, right?
It wasn't meant to be intentional. Yeah, it was that serious, because that wasn't supposed to happen. Like, I think I had writer's block when writing that, so I probably ignored how the wish was supposed to work in canon, because it should have just played out mostly normal. But
it happens to the best of us.
Which was funny. People wanted me to keep Nappa and keep the mistake. It's like, that wasn't my intention. It was an accident. And I just wrote whole script about it.
As a fan, because, when I was watching that, I still wasn't really a what-iffer.
Yeah.
I was a little disappointed when Nappa got, re-killed in a sense, or was always dead. Retcon, that's how I describe it. I was a little disappointed, but, I think that's one of those things where you've got to have some faith that the creator can see more than you can. They have an ending planned, or at least a skeleton planned, you'd hope. And so if they're making a decision that you as a fan may not like, there's hopefully a good reason for it. It may be a mistake, because we're all fallible beings, and you're absolutely entitled to go, hey, I think you made a mistake. But ultimately, I believe creators can't just be doing fan service if they want to be, making good content. Like, a bit of fan service here and there never hurts anyone, but when fan service comes at the detriment of the story you're trying to tell, then it's unhelpful.
Yeah, I think so. I think the other thing with that series in particular is that I had screw-ups with the initial power scaling in the beginning, which is something I wanted to fix for a while, but due to the fact how big that collaboration was, I would probably just have to do it myself and then pick up the series, because some people have been asking, would I re-pick it up? And the thing is, I would. I just have to fix that, so for me to feel comfortable going on.
I completely understand. I mean, power scaling with Dragon Ball is difficult. That was one of the biggest learning curves with starting this Dragon Ball What If. When I was writing out the second part, I had come up with,
Well, power scaling matters if you want to take the scenario seriously. The problem is today, I'm not the same person who wrote those initial scripts, though. This is a weird part.
That's growth, it's good that you've, grown and stuff, but for example, I tried to do power scaling and I'm like, okay, I have a rigid formula. This is how much a person should grow. And I plonked it in and I'm like, oh geez, I have either done very bad math or this will quickly get out of hand to the point where the story ceases being interesting. So I had to go and get some help and go, okay, let's readjust power scaling to make it, something that not only is appropriate for what has happened to get to this point, but also doesn't spiral into, and then Goku one-shots everyone because he has a power level of 70 billion in the Namek Saga,
Right, and I think the thing is, I believe I talked to a couple of Dragon Ball What If people, and they said, you're able to drop using power levels if you want to by the Android Saga, because the last one we see is Trunks' basically, for, setup.
I'm definitely going to do that, and I am looking forward to it, simply because I'm bad at math, and so sometimes when I'll be running a calc, I'll go, that number seems odd, and I'll go back and go, oh, that's because I did math wrong.
Yeah, that's my personal recommendation to you. When you reach that point, that's when Toriyama kind of dropped it. It's at that point, just make sure the fights make sense from that point on. Because raw numbers won't matter at that point as much.
And then you can just work on, ranking in terms of going, okay, at this point, Goku is stronger than Vegeta but weaker than Gohan. And then you can focus more on the narrative of the fights. I completely agree with you.
Well, I think the other thing, like I said earlier, I've moved more towards comedy, so it's certain series I genuinely enjoy. It's hard for me to pick them up again, even if there's stuff written, because it's just not the same style, I guess that makes sense.
True.
With Hercule, what if Hercule's a Saiyan? Have you seen that series?
I have seen it. I don't think I've seen all of it. It's probably... I know.
Yeah. You can tell with that series, it's kind of a joke, because this does not make sense at all to why Hercule should be a Saiyan. But that's just what the plot requires. And it's he just messes around, but still, remains part of the story to an extent for that part. And I think the other one, let's see, have you seen What If Chi-Chi died birthing Gohan? Have you seen that series? When me and Dragonstar did that, did you recognize that the story wasn't necessarily as much about Gohan, but rather Raditz changing as a character. Like, growing from what
I'll
happened
be
to
honest, I
Gohan.
didn't pick that up, but I think back then, I was still also not really doing what ifs, so I was more of a passive,
That's fair.
consumer than a critical one to the way that I am now, where I analyze trends and narrative and all that sort of stuff. So I think if I went and rewatched it now, I'd probably go, "Oh, I see what he's doing here. That's a really interesting way of, developing the character." Is that I remember I enjoyed that series, so it was a good time, and I think it would be good to actually go back and revisit it. I may do that after this interview. Just take a look back and go, "Oh, I see the build up here." Also having the benefit of hindsight.
Yeah, there's a remaster of part 1 where I voiced Vegeta for a short scene.
That's
Sounds
good
decent.
to know. Yeah,
But
I cut out my terrible Vegeta impression from part 1 of my DBZ series. So next time I need one, I might give you a call and say, "Hey man, can you be my Vegeta?"
another question I have for you is, what do you think of the live community today?
I enjoy it. I'm really hopeful when I see people who, are doing their best and trying to make a go of it, because I think what ifs are a lot of fun, and I think, everyone should, take a crack at it if they've got an idea. So it fills me with hope would probably be the best answer I can give. Plus, as just a fan of what ifs in general, having more creators means more content, which I am a-okay with.
Let's see. Do you have plans for any collaboration videos for the future? And what's the best way you think for people to communicate to like a
I
content
have
creator?
some collabs in the future. I won't mention many of them simply because until they're done, I don't want to make a fool of myself by going, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this," then have to come back and go, "Well, actually, no, that failed."
I mean, we could mention our possible collab, but it's more gonna be in the style that I
That's
usually
true.
do content,
There's that one. I've got. I'm trying to think if there's any collabs I can mention at this point in time. Yeah, there is R1. That's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
I know one of those is gonna be fun, depending on what we pick.
Quirky.
Well, there's one that we chose that was super dark, but compared to the other two, it's a lot more kind of like a joke.
That's true. It was a
degree.
I was gonna say quirky would be. Yeah.
It was a creepypasta for one of them.
Sorry, I was just imagining we can cut all this out. Just slowly playing the Lavender Town theme as we talk about that.
No, I'll keep this little bit in. I'll give people
probably a good idea. Yeah.
That
so
one might be.
Yes, I think that'll be a lot of fun. And I've got a couple of other ones in the works, so don't worry.
That's fine. If you can't announce things, we can talk about other stuff. That's fine.
One that I probably can mention is inspired by your "What If Goku Stayed Single" video, in the style of having, multiple different, humans doing little bits, like, narrating and helping to write. And so I'm going to be getting a couple of creators together and going, "Hey,
Well, to be fair with that series I did, I wrote basically all of it. That's why all the mistakes are basically on me. There's people who I would say they helped do edits to it, but they didn't write portions of it. It was all basically done by me.
Good to know.
Just to clarify.
And so that's coming up. That'll be a lot of fun. That's probably the only one, that Narco Lab, that I can mention at this point. But there are collabs on the horizon.
Yeah, I feel that. Let's see. I did want to ask, what was your favorite
I
non-what if
beg your
video
pardon?
you've done so far? Oh, what was your favorite what if video you've done? So like
I've
non-story
I've
thing
only
or second
done a
channel.
couple of non-what ifs. I did the Wants to Battle challenge for Birdkeeper Toby, which is not good. Don't go watch that. And I did my Pokemon rankings of all the movies. That was an interesting experience, going through all of them in about a week and driving myself to near insanity. So I'm not sure that I can say I like that, simply because when I think back to it, I think of 18 hours or thereabouts of just, movie after movie after movie after movie. So I'm going to say the podcasts I've guested on, especially this one.
That's fine. Do you watch any
Oh,
what
I
if
watch a
content
lot.
creators today, or do you have any? Do you want to just give like a top 10 then, since there's a lot? I
I'd probably do
guess,
have a
or
top
you don't
10. I
have
mean,
many.
A couple, I very much enjoy yours. I love the classics, Moscow X, Mugstick, Salad Saiyan. In the Pokemon community, I really love the work of, Trainer Dino, plus Ultraman, Ren, and Charizard, who is one of my big inspirations, and a name who I feel truly doesn't get enough appreciation, Rune Scribble. I think that was 10, I wasn't counting. If it wasn't, you can...
You know what? I'll say it's 10, and someone will comment if
There's
there
probably
isn't
like 6, and they'll be like,
We'll
you
go with
can't
that.
count. Which, if anyone does that, tell me, and I will write back in the comments, yes.
To be honest, our time zones are very wonky that we're dealing with, so you got a guy who's partially tired here, and you have another one who's kind of just waking up to the world. So we're just going off
We're doing our
at
best.
this point, I
think
guess.
that was 10. Yeah.
Sure, why not? I'm gonna ask this question. So when do you think it's worthwhile making another channel for different type of content instead of uploading non-what if
I
content
think
to your main
it's
channel?
good in the sense that it allows for a clear distinction. Because originally, I had planned to do multi-franchises on the main channel like you do. And that's why my, channel name and channel mascot, none of it is Pokemon themed. Because I'd planned to start with Pokemon and then branch into things like Dragon Ball Z, Star Wars, Attack on Titan. But I kind of just kept going with Pokemon ones, and I kept doing them, and I kept enjoying them. And by the time I actually started having ideas for other ones, it doesn't feel quite right to suddenly take this Pokemon audience and, send them towards, say, Star Wars if they're not a Star Wars fan. So by making the other channel, I was able to go, hey everyone, if you like these other things, and you like non-what ifs, come to this channel. If you just want Pokemon, then don't fret. That's going to be still coming consistently on the main channel as it ever has. Plus, I mean, it's given me a chance to, build up a different audience. Like, the majority of my second channel audience seems to be Dragon Ball focused, and I like to hope that some of them will eventually trickle over to my main channel and vice versa, but, it's very interesting to be able to do that and just have two totally separate sort of fan bases.
I get that. I think with why I structured my channel the way I do is basically because I wanted to keep majority of my content like what if focused anyways. So it's like I didn't see an issue branching out to other franchises, and especially considering that I primarily just do a lot of editing for people these days. If I get time to make a video, I want
Yeah,
it to be on
absolutely. And I
something that I
think
care
because of your
about,
branding, your
basically.
way works really well. If I hadn't, just done Pokemon consistently from the get-go, I probably would have done exactly the same way you do it. It was just that I kind of pigeonholed myself early on.
Well, I also picked a very bizarre setup because I started with MHA,
Ah, yes.
then I went to Death Note, then Assassination Classroom, then Death Parade. I went to a lot of like very different stuff, but still turned out
Yeah.
okay, at least for the most
I'm
part.
remembering your Light series. That was fun.
Yeah, I think the last part I did was part 2, but it was mostly we were discussing alternative ways that scenario could have played out because there was a few things I
And I mean,
had
you've got your Attack on
that were
Titan
noteworthy.
series. I'm really enjoying that. Because that...
Oh yeah, people were surprised with that series because when it originally came out, it stagnated around like 2,000 views, and then suddenly, like overnight, with the re-upload, because technically the collab that's up right now is not the original video. Originally, I did it by myself, but then I chose to rework it to a collab, and it turned out better the second time.
That's cool. I mean, it's a good series. I quite enjoy that, and I mean, AOT what ifs are uncommon, so that was a good sort of market you pretty much blazed for yourself.
There's other Attack on Titan what if videos are out there, but a lot of them are more, I would say, less story based compared to what I was doing. And with that series, I have been taking it mostly seriously, but you can tell with Siren how we play off each other. There is enough like jokes thrown in that I think it's fine and fits within what I do,
which is always important because no one wants to sit through a what if that is a slog, and you definitely keep it from ever being a slog.
I do plan on doing a redux of part 1 because there was some editing issues. I used the wrong character for one scene, and also the intro is a lot drawn out, but that's because that was retained from the original time I did the video, basically. Let's see, is there anything in the future you want to improve?
I want to become a better audio editor because I try my best, but I'm self-taught, so every video is learning a bit more. I'd like to become a bit smoother with that. I'd like to be able to get to a setup where I don't, have faint birds or faint, popping from, something. And, I like to think I'm getting a little better, but I'd like to improve. Same with my thumbnail design. That, visual arts are not my strong suit, so every new thumbnail is just an endeavor to practice and try and be a little better than the last one. I'd like to one day get to a point where I can actually go, my thumbnails are good, not just better than the last.
Well, that's good goals to have.
Yeah.
If you have advice to people who want to quit making what ifs or just quit YouTube, what do you tell them?
That's an interesting one. I mean, I suppose it depends on why they want to quit. If they're not having fun with it, then I'd probably say, you're absolutely entitled to quit. If that is not making you happy, then you shouldn't force yourself to keep producing content. But if it's, struggling with, oh, this is hard, or oh, I don't feel I'm improving, or oh, I'm not as big as you know, some of the most famous people, then I'd say, you know, keep trying, keep doing your best. You're on your own journey. If you still choose to quit, that is absolutely your prerogative, but, you know, it's not falling down, it's staying down, sort of thing. It's only over when you choose to be done.
Yeah, alright. Let's see. Have you ever received criticism
Oh,
from a
yes,
video
and
and managed
I'm,
to
you know,
improve from it?
always grateful for that. Like, I frequently will reach out to friends and say, hey, you know, how could I have done this better, you know? What do you think of this? And thankfully, you know, my friends don't sugarcoat things. They get down to the bone, just go, yeah, you know, this could be better, or this could be better, and I go, yeah, you're right, that could have been better, and yeah, that was a mistake in retrospect. And so, I try to improve. I also have received criticism and gone, no, that is, you know, I have a reason why that thing is the way it is, so I will choose to ignore it, but generally, if I believe a criticism is valid, I will try to learn from it, and some of the best, you know, lessons I've learned have come as a result of criticism.
Alright, I think that's all for what if related questions I kind of wanted to ask. I want to move into more
Sure.
like general YouTube stuff if you don't mind, and then we'll close some stuff off. So I did want to ask, with the dislike button kind of being hidden from the public, has there been any noticeable like improvement you think
Not
on the
to
site
my
because of this?
knowledge. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't really, you know, think about the dislike button per se, because for my content, I can still see every dislike I get, and it helps me gauge, you know, the opinion, but I've also seen the dislike button be used to bully, you know, creators who do very legitimate things. So, you know, I suppose I can see both benefits and downsides to it being removed, and don't really have a clear, you know, argument one way or the other. Sorry that ultimately led to the most nothing answer ever.
Alright. Let's see, the other question I had is, has YouTube handled short format content well, like with YouTube clips, highlights, or YouTube like shorts?
It's interesting. I'm not a big fan of YouTube Shorts.
Hey, I'm not either. I think there's so many problems
Yeah,
that
exactly.
came
I
up from
think
it
you and I
actually
probably have a
helping,
very similar
personally.
view when it comes to YouTube Shorts. So, I'm.
If
Yeah.
it was mobile only, I would be okay with it. But they're
I
trying to
mean,
put it
the
on the
weird aspect
desktop, and it's
ratio
not
as
helping.
well, and the fact that it just kind of feels like a shameless attempt to make TikToks. You go, look, you know, that's.
Well, speaking of the aspect ratio, like, you remember when you're watching like anime that's like 4 by
Yeah.
3, like OG Dragon Ball Z, like others have like the black bars, like it feels like that, but the content isn't worth watching because the aspect
Yeah,
ratio
God,
change.
it's.
Is how I
I
feel
am not a
about it.
fan of shorts. I mean, if you're the sort of creator who only, wants to do short form stuff, more power to you. But from a personal consumer point of view, I am not a fan. Would probably be my answer.
That's what I mean as well. I think it has worked out well for some people. I think Kartu has a whole channel dedicated to shorts, but not sure, like, long-term wise, it's like, does this actually help channels? Because I haven't seen enough evidence, at least for me. Like, the only channel that I've seen that it has worked out well for was Jack's Films, actually, because he did a ton of shorts when his channel was dying, and it somehow rejuvenated it. So I'm kind of
Do you mind if I add
skeptical,
one
if you know what I
more
mean.
what if who I like to the list? Because slipped my mind, and you can just cut it in, make it sound like I didn't
Yeah, you
forget this
can.
person. I'm hoping.
No, you can just say it now. I'm not
Fair
gonna
enough.
go this
Also,
far into
to
editing
list a
at this
couple
point.
more, I do like Carthu, as you said, and Mystic Umbreon. Those are two names who I didn't think of, and hopefully that will actually bring the number to 10. Or maybe it's 12 now. Or maybe it's 6. I don't know.
I remember in the past, before I did What If content, I used to talk a bit with Mystic Umbreon and Pro Mario and all these PokeTubers when they were first coming out, because at the time I was trying to do Pokemon related content. It just didn't turn out
Yeah.
well at the time,
I mean,
basically. Like, the best thing that happened was, do you remember when Team 4 Star did Tiba? I don't know if you're around for that.
names don't ring a bell.
It was like their abridged contest.
I don't think I saw that.
thing that they're doing. So back in the day, I did enter in Tiba, but I don't have the entry anymore because I didn't think at the time to save it. And also, I got a new computer, so it's way long gone. But basically, we did an abridged of Pokemon Origins. It had Bulbatube as Professor Oak. It had Pokemon Insider, I believe, is Red.
Damn.
I think Mystic Umbreon voiced a character, and I think Pro Mario also voiced like a one-liner for like a
That would
Team
have been
Rocket
something
grunt.
to say.
But you have to think, at the time, this is 2015. Like, this is like, no one's at their prime-ish yet, or close.
That would have
to
been,
getting there at that point. You
that would have
know,
been something really to see. I wish I could have seen it.
well, that's the sad thing. It's like, if I had it today, like, it would have been like fairly noteworthy. But the only thing they have remained is a Bulbatube. There was a musical number where Professor Oak's saying like about a whole new world, but it's
Yeah.
a parody about the Pokemon universe, basically. And I still have that, but that's
How
it.
long is it?
I don't have
'Cause
anything else. from
I'm
that.
just ironically imagining maybe you should make that a short.
I think it's like 2-something minutes. It's the song. I've tried to put it
yeah.
up before, but it got taken
Yeah,
down because of
Disney,
Disney, because of the instrumental.
Disney are pretty
So there wasn't
you
much
know,
I could do with it.
ruthless with their copyright and protection.
I mean, if you want to listen to it, I could see if I can find it on my desktop somewhere, but it's
If you find it,
pretty
I'd
much
definitely
buried,
watch
I'm
it,
pretty
but
sure.
you need to go to insane lengths.
Well, the other thing that was interesting is that wasn't the only abridged project I did. So the other one I was working on before I shifted more What If content was a parody that included Death Note and also Yu-Gi-Oh! Of all things.
That
Like, that
is-
was what it was about.
I feel like that would either be
And like, oh man.
incredible or melt your brain. But I would definitely.
I believe I do have one of the best scenes, though,
Please do.
that I'll send
Please
you to
do,
listen to after we're done here. Because the person who voiced Pegasus for it was really good, like, for all of his stuff. And like, some of the stuff I wish I could share, but the thing is, like, I don't like sharing
Completely
such
understandable.
incomplete stuff, basically.
Yes, that does sound incredible.
Let's see. I only have 3 questions left. We'll get to these fast enough. What are your thoughts on parasocial
That's an
relationships?
interesting one because, you know, ooh,
Yeah, I think it's interesting because smaller content creators have a different point of view compared to the larger people I ask,
probably
basically.
exposing myself as something of a narcissist, but, you know, being a small creator, I get an absolute kick out of the concept of there being, you know, parasocial relationships between my audience and myself. And that's definitely an ego thing. I make no denial of that. But, you know, because I spent so long as a fan of other creators, you know, yourself included, I created these sort of parasocial relationships of my own, so I probably have a more fond view towards them than maybe I should. And also meeting some of the people who, you know, in the past, I would watch and go, oh my god, you know, this person is some, you know, higher being than me, a scrub who's just here watching YouTube and eating Cheetos. To actually meet them in person is crazy, so I'm probably more in favor of them than I should be, would be the honest answer.
Let's see. What do you think made What Ifs become like their own community compared to what AniTube was?
I think specifically
like,
in the Pokemon sector, I definitely give a lot of.
I think the Pokemon sector. Well, to be honest, PokeTubers happened around 2014-ish, like when they derived from AniTube, and I think our stuff's fairly recent. I think. I don't know when Moscow started doing What Ifs.
Moscow definitely
it's kind of hard to recall.
Bridged the way into What Ifs with then, you know, Salad and Carthu and Smugstick coming up after him. In the Pokemon sector, you had, you know, Mystic doing his What Ifs in the past, then you had Enter the Unknown, and then when Pokemon really became a community, I think Ronin Charizard is the father, if you will, of the modern style of Pokemon What Ifery, in my opinion. Because...
No, I agree, because I think the person who would predate him would be someone like Proto Mario, but he's a lot less story-focused, and he's more of like what Carthu does, for the most part, with his Dragon Ball What Ifs. Though, to be fair, I do think Carthu is a bit more story-driven than what Proto Mario is, technically, because he did like
true. I mean, I'm not super familiar with Proto Mario's content, so I can't really comment there, but I've been a long-time viewer of Carthu, so I definitely see what you mean.
I can say Proto Mario is like one of those really OG Pokemon YouTubers. He did shift his content a while back to news stuff, but I will say his Pokemon stuff,
I'll definitely give
for
it
the
a
most
look.
part, still holds up for most of it.
Yeah, but yeah.
And is there anything you want to tell my audience before we end here?
Be nice to Drew. He makes good content. I'm hoping your audience are nice to you and aren't constantly yelling at you. Yes, be nice to Drew.
I mean, they were about me making new parts and stuff.
I was going to say that.
It's fine.
That's
most
that's
YouTubers,
my audience too. But yes,
in our space,
be nice to Drew. Support his content because he makes good stuff. And hey, if you want to check out my content, I'm shameless enough to say please do that. Yeah.
I mean, that's what this part ends for.
Ooh, I'd probably say the series that most people seem to like best, the one that's doing pretty well in terms of it's got a fair few parts under its belt, is What If Red Trained Ash. It's largely set in Kanto, it brings together the games and the anime. I think it's got a bit of heart, a bit of humor, decent bit of action. So if you're just going to check out one of my series, I'd say check that out. Or if you're more of a Dragon Ball fan, on my second channel, there's What If Goku Was Guardian of Earth, which there's one part out currently, and depending on when this podcast goes up, a second part may also be out by then.
I'll probably have this up by this weekend here. I'll have to edit through the audio here. But
hopefully I didn't
should
make
be able
that
to
too
have it out
difficult
by
for
Saturday,
you,
hopefully.
having to edit things.
Yeah, there's only a couple things we'll edit out. But anyways, we're going to end things off here. I hope y'all enjoyed. And always remember, in What If Universe, there are endless possibilities. And yeah, we will see when we do our collab. Who knows which channel will be on, because
Yes,
we never
indeed we will.
established that yet.
Thank you very much for having me.
But we'll figure it out.